Hi, welcome to Chad's Silversmithing. Before we get too far into the video, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button, that really helps to get my channel promoted, and I do appreciate that immensely. I also love it when people leave comments, like suggestions for videos, questions about the video, how they do things. You know, constructive criticism is always nice. So those kinds of things are great, and I do appreciate those as well. I'm going to do a 3-project video today, and I thought I would focus on some forms that are derived from the Bauhaus School of Art, which was an art school in Germany kind of between World War I and World War II that I think it was 1919 through 1933, I believe. And it was pretty influential in kind of the forms and shapes that became popular in the mid-century modern period, and still to this day you see a lot of things that kind of remind you of Bauhaus artwork. Lots of clean geometric shapes, simple, clean curves, lots of circles or half circles, kind of rainbow shapes. Things like that are frequently seen in Bauhaus kind of pieces. Most famous piece, I think, is probably the teapot that was made by, I don't remember the artist, but somebody out of the Bauhaus school who created this interesting looking teapot that's kind of cool and sleek. So I'm going to make 3 different pairs of earrings that are kind of Bauhausy. We'll see how that turn out. One is going to be just made out of a single disc of silver, and I'm going to do some cuts to it and some bends to make it interesting. The second one is going to be some half circles of different sizes soldered to a vertical post. The third one is going to have a stone in it, but it's also going to have a hollow box. And the stones I'm using are these kind of a little bit, they almost look shield shaped because they're like half of a lozenge shape. And so I think those will make an interesting, clean kind of geometric shape to hang below the box that I'm making out of silver for those. So we'll see how those turn out. Before we get going, I wanted to thank some people. My patrons over on Patreon are my core group of supporters, and I think they are wonderful. They form this marvelous community over there. They share ideas, resources, talk with each other about different styles and things, and it's just a really nice atmosphere. I wanted to thank my newest patron. It's Chainring. Thank you for signing up. I do appreciate your support, and I think you'll find a great group of people over there, as I have. So thank you all for that. I do appreciate it. My other group is my YouTube subscribers, and we just passed 16,100, which is amazing to me. Thank you so much for that. If you haven't subscribed but you like my videos, why don't you subscribe? I'd love to have you as a subscriber. But I do want to express my appreciation for the people who leave such nice comments. It's nice to know when people are getting something out of my channel, and that way it feels like you're doing some good. I always hope to do some good here. So thank you also for the financial support, like the Buy Me a Coffees and the Super Thanks. Those things help a lot. All right, well, let's get started on these 3 projects. This is one of my design idea books you can get at my merch store. The recent ones have these nice charts on the back. There's several different designs. This particular chart is fractions of an inch to decimals to millimeters, which I find pretty useful for conversions. There's some other ones too. There's an American wire gauge to millimeters, which I think is useful for people overseas maybe. What I like about them is they have this little grid pattern in the background that helps me to keep things kind of symmetrical, as my drawing skills leave something to be desired. Okay, but here's the 3 things that I came up with today. This one is basically going to start out as a disc, and I don't even know how big I made that. I just kind of chose a size. That one is about 19 or 20 millimeters diameter. And then what I'll do is I'll make one cut to the center from one side, and so there'll be a half circle if you looked at it from the side that you can't see, that's this middle part here, and the 2 pieces that were the original other half circle will be folded to either side. And I think that'll make kind of interesting earrings that'll catch a lot of light, so, and just be kind of cool. I'll do them in the opposite direction too, so this one will face this way, the other one will face this way. Second, I'm going to do just a little bar made out of 14 gauge sterling round wire, and that's 1.6 millimeters if I remember right. This is 0.66 millimeters, or 22 gauge sheet I'm going to use for that. These pieces I'm going to use 18 gauge sheet, which is 1.02 millimeters, as well as this is going to be a little disc punched out of some sheet too. And I already pre-punched all of these and cut them in half just for time's sake, because I'd have to use my disc cutter. If you've never seen a disc cutter, this is a cheap disc cutter where you just slide a piece of sheet in there, choose the size disc you want, and you hit it with a hammer really hard and it pops out a little circle. So that's what I did in advance. So that'll be a pretty easy one to assemble, I think. The third one is going to have these amethysts. I pre-made the bezels just because that's one of those things that you can check out in a different video if you'd like to see how to make a bezel set facet stone. Here's a link up there for you. Well, you can see how they're kind of unusual shape. They're not really half circles. They're more like a half lozenge. Like if you put two back to back, it would be kind of a long, straight oval. So that's going to go in the bezel right there and hang from this little box made out of 18 gauge sheet. This came out to be about, I think it was about 10 or 11 millimeters per side. And then we'll put a piece of 16 gauge round down through a hole that we drill in there and attach it to the bezel down here, and then make it into an earring. And I think those will be kind of cool. Simple but clean shapes, interesting design. We'll see how they turn out, but I think they should be cool. Alright, so to start with, we're going to do this one, and I've already cut the disc, like I said. And then I filed it, but I don't know if I filed it perfectly. So it's handy if you have one of these things. They're to find the center of things. So I'm just going to take my pencil here and kind of try and run it right down the center of that. And let's turn it 90 degrees this way. Try and get that line to line up along with these lines. Is that what you call drawn and quartered? Okay, so I just need to cut in about midway down there, and I'm just going to use my little shears. Try and get it right on that line. Get it right up to that central point. And then I think I'm going to use my my flat nose pliers like this. I think if I line it up at the end there, I got a pretty good 90-degree angle there. If I bend that and then move it up here and bend it up here too, I should be able to get a pretty clean bend there. I had to bend it the other way. I realized I pre-made one of each of these to see how they would come out, and I realized I just made this one backwards because I was making it the same as the first one I made, so I just reversed the way that this thing bent. So we'll see if that stands up. I may put a little solder on there just to reinforce it. I can always cut a new disc if it breaks or something. One thing about these, though, I'm going to be having them like this. They're pretty pointy, so I'm probably going to file them just a little bit to make them not so lethal. If you're making earrings, you don't want to have your customers stab themselves in the neck or something. That's not a good way to get repeat customers. Alright, so if you're new to my channel, I use hard silver sheet solder for almost everything. This is what that looks like right there. I use a liquid flux that I dribble on with a little dropper bottle mostly. And for this one, I'm going to use a third hand actually to hold this, I think. Let's see. So I made some little jump rings out of some 18 gauge round wire, and I just wrapped it around, where are you? The smallest one on my bail making pliers, the smallest bar there. And so we'll just cut one off of there. Cut a few fresh pieces of solder. I don't need a very, too huge of pieces. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to solder this closed, and I'm going to plop it right on here. The torch that I use is a Silversmith model. It's an acetylene air torch. It just pulls in atmospheric air to mix with the fuel gas here. It's a good torch. I like it a lot. So let's flux this a little bit. And I do something called pick soldering. If you're interested in that, I'll put a video up there for you. It's a really useful skill. I think you'd find it pretty useful if you learn how to do that. Allows you to place solder pretty precisely, like that. So if I want to put a little advanced solder up top here to make sure that we have an easy way to solder that. Now I'm going to find my tweezers. See if we can't just plop that on there. So for the second one, we're going to do these. Got a piece of 14 gauge round wire that is roughly 30 millimeters or 3 centimeters. And I've got these discs that I cut in half out of 18 gauge sheet. I'm going to fish the other one out I did earlier so that I can make sure I have these symmetrical. So I've got this one. Just make sure this is nice and flat. I'm going to make a little mark on my marker so I know where the top of it should go. Right there. Okay, we'll see if I can get that lined up on the pad the same way. I don't know. I guess we'll find out. I think that's pretty close. One of those situations, you could lay a piece of solder on there, but I'm going to go ahead and pick solder like I usually do. I wanted to thank those people who bought my ebook recently. It's been very popular, and I do appreciate the support. Working on the 2024's guidebook, so that should be out sometime shortly after the beginning of the year. Takes a while to compile all the extra notes and things, though. Trying to get it done before the end of the year, but my schedule is pretty busy. Good thing about solder is you can put it way down here, and as long as you got an even join between the two, it'll just wick right up along there. So Now let's put that little circle at the bottom. If you're new to this, when you're soldering things, it's important that both pieces you're soldering together reach the flow temperature of the solder you're using. I'm using hard silver sheet solder, which which flows at about 1450 degrees. And so this is an 18 gauge piece of wire that I wrapped around a piece of 14 gauge wire to make a very small kind of 18 gauge jump ring. But if you want to get a good solder joint, both need to reach that temperature in order for it to really bond together. So accordingly, if you think about it, and this is an important one of those precepts of soldering silver, if you want to, stop having melting situations and stuff, this has very little mass. This has a lot of mass. And so if you want those two to reach temperature at the same time, which is 1450, like I said, it's going to take longer to get that up to the temperature than that. This will take seconds versus the other piece, which will take a little while. So I'm going to heat mostly over here first, and then start including this one there. See how that kind of just jumped in there? So, all right, so those are done. I think those will be kind of fun. Let's see how close we got. Not bad. All right, we'll let those ones pickle, and then let's move on to the third one. Show you the prototype piece. So you can see I made a square out of 18 gauge sheet, soldered it together, and then I drilled a hole all the way through it and ran a piece of 16 gauge round through it with a loop at the top, soldered that in, and then I added the bezel at the bottom, and that's what we'll do. So then we'll pickle everything and get everything all polished up and cleaned up and get these stones set, and we'll be done. I cut these longer than I needed, and let's see, about how wide did I make them? 6.5 millimeters wide, and let's see, we got 10, 20, 30, 40, 52-ish. If I remember right, on this one I measured about 12, because if you take 52 and divide by 4, you get 12.5, I think. So if I do this, I don't want the corner to meet in a corner, or the edge to meet in a corner here. And so I'm going to start a little bit over here. Make those two marks like that. This is just going to be a guide for where I bend them. So if we're going with 12-ish on each side, that one there comes out to about 11, and this one comes out an extra like 5. So we're going to have to cut some off when we do this, but to start with, let's let's make some sharp bends. Try and keep them along the lines here. We'll actually use this one as a guide. That's why I pulled it out of the pickle, so I had to get them pretty symmetrical. Just in case I didn't quite measure right or something. I'm moving it a little away from the line so that it actually bends right on the line. Hopefully. See how close we got there. That's not too bad. I thought about doing this in 4 pieces and using my miter vise jig to cut 45s and just solder them together. But I think I like the rounded kind of square thing better. It looks more Bauhausy to me. If there is such a thing as Bauhausy. However, this is a bit of a trial and error thing to get these squares nice. So you can see right now this side's a little bit too long, so I need to take a little bit more off of this one. I think that's pretty close. Now I'll neaten up where the bends occur a little bit once we have it soldered together. So let's solder this one together. Flux that and lay a little piece across. You could probably get by with, say, 20 or 22 on this if you wanted a thinner profile on the sheet. It might be a little hard to bend if you got much thicker than 18. I'm going to take a moment and round these corners just a little bit on the inside like that. It's a tiny bit bigger, but it's close enough, I think, to call good. I don't think anybody will ever notice. Okay, so now we need to find, let me file this down flat on either side. So I'm going to try and find the center lengthwise here, because I'm going to need to drill a little hole through there. About right there, I think. Okay, so let's go and drill a hole in this. So I've got a bit that's just a tiny bit bigger than a 16 gauge wire. And I'm going to make a little center punch mark there. I usually use an ice pick because it's got a sharper point than a center punch, and then I can get a pretty precise spot. I don't have a Fordham tool, unfortunately. So I just used my drill. Okay, so I grabbed a piece of 16 gauge round wire, and I'm just going to feed it through this hole I just cut. And what I really care about is I want it to look parallel to the sides, and so I'm going to set it down here like this. I'm going to try and mark on the side where it's going to look the most parallel. That's pretty good. I think that's straight enough, so let's head back to the other area and let's get this thing going. Okay, to make this loop up here, if I recall, I just used this. And once you have it in kind of a P shape like that, grab it on the stem of the P and bring it back like this. Then we can bring this a little bit closer together. So really I just need to stick it through there, solder that there, and solder it there. And then we'll cut this off to the right length, and then I'll show you how we'll solder that bezel on. So let's get this all together. So I'm going to cut a few more pieces of solder. Solder, for those of you across the ocean. Some of my patrons are from the UK or Australia or New Zealand. They all tell me that I say solder wrong. So I can kind of eyeball, if I line these up, how far down I cut this one. You could measure it precisely if you wanted. Let's say I usually cut it a little bit long and then file it down, or take it down just a little bit more until it's right where I want it. Now, I have 2 layers of wire in here to create the step for these, and so I don't want this to solder way up high where I'm going to be bending it over the stone to hold it in place, and so I needed to elevate this a little bit in order to keep it from doing that. And one way you can do it, let me figure out which side I like better here. This side that's better as the front. You push it down into one of these softer surfaces, like a magnesia block, just a little bit. Now we can just pick solder a little bit on there. If I can find my soldering pick, there it is. I got any solder here left. Did I flux that? I don't think I fluxed that. Bad Chad. Again, there's a mass disparity here. There's quite a bit more mass in this top piece than there is the bottom piece, so I'm going to focus more on that at first. Once you master that concept in your brain, things become a lot easier. It seemed like it took me a year or so to kind of have that click into my mind finally, where I just automatically didn't worry. I just kind of knew where to put the heat. So give yourself a little time to figure that out, because I think it's almost what they call muscle memory, kind of. You've done something enough to where you just kind of automatically do it because your brain has developed a script for it. And once that happens, all of a sudden you can do whatever you want, pretty much. Well, within reason. Those are pretty good. I'm gonna, like I said, I'm gonna let those all pickle, put them on some 20 gauge ear wires that I'm gonna make, and then we'll put them all together at the end. So I got everything all polished up, and here's the first pair. That's kind of what I was thinking. You can see that. And those should, as they move, those will catch the light really nice. You could make those out of different metals too, I would imagine. Here's the second ones. This came out pretty nice. I like the shape. It looks like kind of a sinuous shape based on simple shapes, so it's kind of nice. This one I thought about doing some textures on some of those half discs. But you could also probably do mixed metals. You could do brass, copper, and silver, and that would be kind of cool. Or textured, or reticulated, or whatever. Make some variations. That would be kind of fun. And there's these ones here. I think those came out nice. I think those would be interesting. So lots of variations here possible. I'm curious which ones you like the best. I will tell you after some other people comment which ones that they like the best, which ones are my favorites. But yeah, I'll take some better pictures and put them at the end of the video. So that was the 3 different Bauhaus earrings. I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, don't forget to hit the like button before you leave. And I'd love it if you take a moment and check out my main channel page. I have checked today to see how many videos I'm up to. I'm up to 412 videos, so there's a ton of content over there. I think you'll find that if you go over there and peruse some of that, you'll find some other things that were interesting, especially if you found this one interesting. But check those out and come back and make sure to subscribe to my channel and maybe hit that bell so that you get notifications. I put out videos on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, so 3 per week. So there's tons of content coming out all the time. So the other thing is, hit the video description down below for some important links. You can get that ebook I talked about earlier. In the video description, there's a link for that. There's a link to my merch store if you want to get one of those nice design idea books that I find so handy. And there's a link to my Patreon if you want to check out that community over there. So I'd love to have you as a part of that as well. So, all right, well, thanks for watching. Take care. Happy silversmithing.